And I'll do the 3-round. I was planning on doing the 3-round prayer at the end because this is a solar holiday. Okay, so I've got it. Recording. My screen sharing's paused. Okay. I don't know what I did. All right. Let's try this again. I've had a lot, Mercury retrograde, I've had a ton of technical difficulties lately. My computer goes off every day and it's crazy stuff. All right, I got it back. So hopefully we can stay together this evening. All right, so yeah, so it's winter solstice. The winter solstice is going to be on Thursday. I'll talk about the time later. For us in Arizona at 8:27 p.m. on Thursday. So one of the things I've been working on for it's been about 20 years because I started this work before Sophia's born and she's going to be 20. So I said Sophia and she called. Anyway, so one of the things I've been working on is or I believe that by attuning to the natural cycle, the solar year, that there is a healing opportunity. And when I lived in Moab, I was really deep into studying gardening, and that's when I was really teaching myself how to garden with the moon. And I was at that time I was looking into co-creative gardening, which is where you work with the nature spirits and the Davic spirits and the garden spirits to develop your garden. That's to learn about how to create balance. Because according to Michelle Small-Wright, she makes flower essences and plant essences. Sorry, I can't say that, essences. That nature teaches us about balance. The nature form part of the world we live in is about balance, is to keep, I mean, it's a moving balance, it's a dynamic balance, but it's an attempt to create this balance. And us as humans, as a consciousness, let's say the spiritual part of us, we have the freedom of choice and to create whatever we want. And so she has a practice for a garden where you write what's called the DDP, which is I wasn't going to go into all this, but I'll just give you a little overview, where you write the definition, direction, and purpose of the garden. And it can be a literal garden like the one I grow here, or it can be any activity or endeavor like a project or a book or a business plan. You write what you want, that's the definition of what you're creating. The direction is sort of like the timeline, I guess, and the purpose is the purpose. And nature, because nature really understands form and balance, nature supplies the form. It's kind of like the what and how thing, like we define the what and God delivers the how. It's very much like that, is that when we're working with nature, we define what we want to create. And nature helps us to figure out the most balanced way to bring it forth. And I think Michelle Small-Wright's mission is to teach people how to do this work in balance, but also to heal the earth through this procreative work with the nature spirits. She's very much into like balancing your properties and your gardens to mitigate climate change and to keep that balance in these turbulent times. So I think that's important because I realize even now, this work is still about balance to me, even however many years later it's been. And we achieve balance in the solar year by going through, on the wheel that I have on the right side, by going through by participating or attuning with nature in these 8 different slices of the pie. And if we at least somewhat interact with that or take those actions, it brings us into a state of balance, or it helps us to remember the balance that the earth, the earth cycle already is in, or the cycle that nature, on the earth is enacting through the seasons. There's a lot, for thousands of years, we as agricultural societies, we did rituals and holidays at these different times of the year to participate in the solar cycle and to assure that there was an abundant harvest, and to also do the spiritual work as the year, to do the physical, both this physical work, the mental work, the spiritual work, right? We got in alignment with these different activities to ensure the survival of humans, but also assure the prosperity and abundance. And so more in Celtic and Wiccan culture, Wiccan and Northern European did these really 8 solar holidays throughout the year. This is very astrological to look at the solar holidays and these points as moving through the solar year. But the ancient, let's say, Egyptians and Greeks and Romans also had holidays that were agricultural, that they changed the activity of the work, and they had festivals where they did the plowing and festivals where they did the sowing, and some where they did the reaping, and there were a lot of their life was structured around the agricultural cycle, and how that shifted their attention, their work, the kind of work they were doing. I think for our modern time, I believe that we attune to this more for our spiritual balance and spiritual growth, and that there's still these turning points, right? We're at a threshold right now. Winter solstice is a threshold to a new, let's say, I would call micro season, right? There's 6 weeks starting at winter solstice to the midpoint between the seasons, which would be the middle of Aquarius. That's another threshold. And then there's another one at the spring equinox, and another one on May Day, and another one on summer solstice, and so forth. And the purpose, I guess, of this celebration is to, mark the transition from one mode of work, if you will, to the next. And the mode of work that we've been doing with the candle magic, and that we started on November 5th, was really to surrender. We talked about the psychic death. We talked about Thanksgiving. We really talked about letting go of 2022, letting go of, whatever came up for us this year, whether it was fear or pain, I don't know, shame, whatever came up this year emotionally, whatever came up mentally, physically, spiritually, and to let that go, or at least to make a symbolic gesture, an intention to let it go, because we want to prepare ourselves for the new beginning that the winter solstice symbolizes, the rebirth. I think I got most of that, even though I didn't talk about it straightforward. I just want to show this because I don't know if Francesca's seen it. I mean, because we talked a lot about the moon when you started, Francesca, but I've probably shown you this, but this is a diagram that Scott and I made based on, okay, I did this mediumship workshop in around 2000. And after I went to mediumship, it was like a week where we did these mediumship activities and talked to our guides and smelled our guides and did past life memories and stuff like that. I started to have these visions of how the solar cycle and the lunar cycle, or any cycle of the planets, interact. I mean, you could add Venus into here and Mercury, you know what I mean? But I had this vision particularly of how the solar rhythm interacted with the lunar rhythm. And this is like from 2019, so this is not an accurate picture of this year, but the solar rhythm is this big wave that starts, in my opinion, at winter solstice, peaks at summer solstice, and then descends back to winter solstice. And then throughout any year, we have about 13 lunations, and they, wave through the year. And this is actually, as I've studied it more over the years, trying to understand this vision, this really represents what's called the Saros cycle. That's that one that has to do with the nodes, the interaction of the sun and the moon, and how when the the sun doesn't move. So the way the earth spins, the way we connect with the sun and the moon, they interact, they cross each other's paths every day, the sun and the moon, the way we perceive it from earth. And that's what determines the nodes, which, again, after studying it for so long, that is really about the soul's journey. The nodes really describe the soul's journey through time. And this Saros cycle is very much about this, like I say, the soul's journey, both described by the sun and the moon, because there's a pattern of 19 years that unfolds approximately 19 years, and then it starts over. Well, we did talk about that with the eclipses. So right now we are at winter solstice. That's why I put this in here. Again, it's at 8:27 Arizona, and for if anybody's watching from the East Coast later, at 10:27 on Thursday. So I just wanted to show this again, a different way, this cycle of the soul. These are the different activities that I think, okay, I really attempted using some of the techniques from Michelle Small, right? To talk to nature and listen to what it told me about what the keywords were for the seasons, the energy. And okay, they did this at the beginning of this year, because it became clear to me that there's the nature cycle, right? There's the earth cycle. And then each sentient being, let's say, has its own cycle, right? Like let's say a strawberry plant is different than a cottonwood tree, is different than any other plant in your garden. Humans have their own cyclical relationship. And maybe even we have our own, even more diverse. If you think about like the animal spirit that represents your heart chakra, you might even have your own kind of cycle based on that. But we have a cycle too. And that's what I was talking to nature about at the beginning of this year. What was kind of the garden cycle, like the earth cycle for the Northern Hemisphere? And then how could we get in attunement with it? And so on the left is, these different modes of the gardening year. Like right now, this next 6-week period is internal, right? Not much is growing, even, I don't know about in Phoenix, but not much is growing up here. Not much is growing in Flagstaff. Most everything has died back and frozen. And we're really, starting a new cycle of the garden year. And then we move through these different phases throughout the year. And coming to the last phase of the year would be the decomposition phase, right? Like things begin to break, the leaves freeze, everything freezes, everything falls, everything decomposes. If you're into nature spirits, there are times when I see them or hear them. This happened the other day. Scott and I were sitting in the hot tub and I heard this rustle of leaves, and I realized there was one tree and all the leaves were like moving and falling off. And I looked around and there was like, this was not happening on any other tree. I mean, it was probably a little bit of wind, but it was like, oh, there's the little nature spirits, taking down the rest of the leaves. And I mean, like I say, I think if you're into the idea of nature spirits, you can kind of see how they act in the garden in the fall to break down the forms, and in the spring to build up the forms. And then in the winter and the summer, It's called the Davic time, which is really the blueprint for, that's the blueprint time. The Devas are more related to the blueprint energy. And that's when, so we're going into a time where we're really connecting with the structure or the blueprint for the year. So we're switching, the decomposing is coming to an end, and it's going to switch to this new Davic time. And so I personally believe this is a time, this next 6 weeks, to really listen to what your David, you can decide what you want to create, right? Like I said at the beginning, you decide the what do you want? What do you want in your life? And that's very much Aries, right? We're in Aries North Node. What do you want? And then listen for how nature, or listen to how God, if you will, would deliver that for you in balance. You know what I mean? That's, again, working on that what and how. What do you want? What's the definition of it? Do you want to create it this year? Is it a long-term project? And what's the purpose of it? And then listen for how you might go about starting it, building it. And then in the next 6 weeks of the year, then we start to really do the planning part of getting ready. Like say it is a real garden, right? That's when I switched to getting the dirt ready or the soil ready, or all that. Make sure I start to think about what kind of plants I want to grow. And I do the planning phase in the second chunk of the year, the second 6 weeks of the year. And then the really active part of the year of sowing and building this up is after the spring equinox. But again, this really has to do a lot maybe with, I do think this is a spiritual cycle. I guess that's what I want to say about it. If you need to keep things going, keep things going. Anyway, it's kind of radical switch here, but from nature. But I wanted to talk to you tonight really about the Saturnalia, which is was the Roman festival that happened at this time of year. Saturn, Saturn was one of the Titans. In Greek mythology, Saturn was a Titan, and he was one of the children of Uranus and Gaia, and they were the 12 children were the Titans. And then Jupiter, Zeus later overturned Saturn and became the leader of the Olympians, the god of the Olympians. And so Saturn's story is often, Saturnian stories are often about this kind of authority, like who's the father, and that's the way it is. And then the child overturns the father, and then that's the new order. And then the child, every subsequent generation is the one that becomes the new authority. And so Saturn knew, because he overtook his father Uranus, he knew that Zeus was going to overtake him. And then somehow Zeus prevented his children. I don't know, somehow Zeus managed to stay in control, or maybe the Greek the Greek culture fell apart or something like that. But it never went on for Zeus's children to start a new order. It kind of stayed there. But this idea of breaking away from the old order to create the new order is a really important theme of Saturn, and the authority, right? The Saturn that you have in your chart is about how you claim your own authority in your life. And it really is about individuation, in the sense that, again, you choose what you want in life. And, our Saturn, working with our Saturn really does bring up our childhood and our limitations. And that as we work with Saturn, we learn to overcome that, and we gain more liberty, and we gain more authority in our lives, because we are, rather than being a victim to them, or rather than just being, under the control of what we were born into, we're learning to work with it, or to I don't know, to break free from it even. So at the Saturnalia, why I think this is such an important metaphor for this time was for about a week, the Romans they had on December 23rd, they celebrated the birthday of the unconquerable sun, and it might have changed a little bit depending on the solstice changes a little bit every year. Like it could be on the 20th or it could be on the 23rd, so 22nd. Anyway, 5 days leading up or about a week before the solstice, they would have this massive party. They would unchain the statues of Saturn, who usually had chains to keep him, keep him chained. And it represented casting away the old fears and the old order and making an opportunity for the new order to come in. So at this time during the Saturnalia, the slaves were served by their masters. They did not have to be slaves for that week. They could do whatever they wanted. They were served by the masters. There was a lot of role playing that happened. And some of the themes of this I think are really interesting. Saturn presides over social justice. Saturn, I think, represents the face and the countenance. So there were offerings of men's heads. I mean, I don't think they cut their heads off, but like sculptural heads, masks. They did role playing and mask wearing. And of course, it was a total week of debauchery and drunkenness. But it was also a time of freedom and liberation. And I think that's what I want to impart tonight, is that as we work with this week, to allow yourself to have that freedom, to take in that freedom and liberty of between the old order and the new order, right? The old order being 2023, and the new order being kind of the solar year of 2024. But there's this couple days where we're between that. We're in the liminal transition between one order and the other. And to play with this idea, I think Saturn's considered a hard god in astrology, but he also kind of requires us to have a sense of humor about our lives and to realize how humorous it, the dramas and struggles that we go through are somewhat humorous also. I mean, that's a Saturn element. So I put here on the left Saturn's glyph, and I think this is interesting. The cross of matter is over the crescent of spirit in Saturn, and on Jupiter it's opposite. The crescent is above the matter. And what I believe, I like what this guy said, seeking to rise above the cross of matter, the soul seeking to rise above. I think that Saturn really teaches us how to deal with matter, the physical, the challenges of being human, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Those challenges are very Saturnian, and Saturn represents karma and responsibility and such like that. And so there's generally a responsibility, I guess, with working with matter, working with ourselves. Anyway, let me go back to the literal. So Saturn in the solar system is the furthest visible planet. It's the furthest visible planet in our solar system. So we can still see Saturn with the naked eye. It marks, he's what's called the ring pass knot. He marks the threshold between the visible and conscious reality that we recognize, right? The sun, things that the sun, represents, Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars, and Jupiter, and Saturn are kind of our conscious reality. And he's at the boundary between that conscious reality and the invisible and unconscious or superconscious reality. His color is indigo. In the Kabbalah, it's black, but it's usually a dark, deep color like the night sky. The element is lead, and his keywords and qualities are form, structure, laws, authority, focus, boundaries, discipline, time, order, and responsibility. I think Saturn, like I was kind of touching on that, represents our struggles with authority and our individuation process to become our own authority. It also is symbolic of how we work with our structure and limitations, right? Like and in that, I didn't put this on here. I guess I put it on the next page. You know, some other Saturn keywords are karma and limitations. Although by working with our limitations, Saturn's interesting. I'll go to the paradoxical slide. By working with our limitations, Saturn teaches us how to have liberty. And so I think that's interesting. Saturn's a very paradoxical figure, in my opinion, in terms of being a teacher for us. So I put the devil card. I believe that the devil represents Capricorn, although I looked it up. I knew that this card represented some Saturnian elements. I didn't do a full deep dive into this card, but it does speak to, in my opinion, to the paradoxical nature of Saturn. There's the goat-headed god here, which is a reference to Capricorn. He oversees the chained man and woman, and they're bonded. So I think the grapes on her tail represent like wine and being drunk, and the fire represents lust. So it's like kind of fighting with the carnal pleasures of, you know, intoxication and lust. But this is and then with these 5-pointed star turned downward, it's kind of about like how you learn. Okay, this is what I think is paradoxical. We learn, you know, right relationship to God by really exploring maybe in some ways the way we aren't in right relationship to God. And this Saturn work, I think, is really partially about that. Like, how do we work with these, you know, patterns from childhood and karma and life, and figure out how to transmute them or embrace them enough that we can have the liberty, the spiritual liberty. So this really, it's interesting, this card. You probably know, Angie, but this card is much more of this is actually a good card to get, because it often represents happiness or joy, or releasing from the bondage. You can see the chains around their neck. And this is the part I think is so fascinating. The chains around their neck are so wide open that they could just take them off if they wanted to. So the man and the woman could just take the chains off and leave at any time. And so I think that also represents, not to say that there are definitely some things in life that we don't choose, but how we choose to work with them as adults is our choice. And this definitely seems like a card about how we work with these limitations. And Saturn's also symbolic through, I mean, this is paradoxical too, but symbolic and paradoxical, how we do resistance training, right? Like if we're doing, you know, resistance training at the gym, we're doing maybe we're doing weights or doing something else that's building our muscles, and it makes us stronger. And I think there's a spiritual way to look at that, right? Resistance, right? I sure feel like I'm doing a lot of resistance training on the emotional level. But it does ultimately, I don't know if it breaks the constraints of our karma, but I think it changes our karma when we work with it consciously. And the creative level of Saturn teaches us about the mystery of God by showing us it's kind of wordy here, but showing us the mystery of God represented in all matter and form. So how each form is always, it's always connected with God. We can kind of see God. If we look carefully enough at anything, perhaps we can see God in every form. Okay. And then, so these are kind of ideas. I want to do the prayer, but since it's not the solstice, and Saturn in some ways is about solitude too, like how to really find oneself and one's soul through solitude. So I was thinking that we could brainstorm some things, some Saturn practices or ritual. So as we talked about, for 3 days, the solstice, the sun appears to stand still. So I assume like sometime on Wednesday, I mean, it stands still as far as it doesn't go any further south. It just kind of appears to rise and set in the same position in the sky, in the same arc in the sky for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then I think this is really, Saturn would say this time is outside of time, right? The 3 days of the solstice is outside of time. And so to really take in that, I don't know, to embrace that being not the old order and not the new order yet. This kind of, like I said before, the liminal transition between the old and the new. And that's what you talked about, I thought, Angie, with the Phoenix, right? There's a space between the, Phoenix burning up in the ashes, and then there's the 3 days, and then it's reborn. We're having that kind of moment. And I think this is important for our own regeneration and transformation. Oh, oops, I lost my. So I was thinking some of the Saturn ideas I had today was, as I was praying about this, to initiate a new practice for yourself. I mean, we do a lot of practices, so you can't take on anything, but I was like, one of the things I looked into was, I mean, I've been doing the Kundalini breathing and meditation, but I also looked into transcendental meditation. When I prayed about, I don't know, I was kind of praying about tonight and my self-care. What I heard was to do morning pages, because that helps me to put down from the artist's way, to really like not get, it keeps me present with where I'm at emotionally. I can write all that down in the morning and then move through it. Like it moves that emotional gunk through me. I'm sure there's many other paths. So those were things I was thinking about today. Like I was kind of pondering if it would be cool to like make a mask for 2023. Like I was like, what would an anxiety mask look like? Or, what would my mask for 2023 look like? And then what would I want in contrast for 2024? So I contemplated I might make a mask for the solstice just to play with that idea. I'd take some time for solitude if you can. Said this, allow yourself to be in a timeless space of transition. These are just ideas. Celebrate the birth of the sun, continue the candle work, and if you're a Roman, you would celebrate in excess. I will probably do that with our family Christmas on. Scott's family celebrates on the solstice, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of food and dessert and stuff like that. But I don't do well with excess, so I gotta keep it under. But that's kind of what the holidays are still about. So do you have any, I do want to do the prayer, but do you have any thoughts about other ideas for the rituals? I mean, there's ones that are more Celtic in nature, like there's one that I read that was, you write your wishes on bay leaves and you have a fire made out of ash wood. That's for prosperity. So you write so that's one. There's certain kind of wood, you can make a Yule log out of birch. It needs to look like birch wood. Or it's, birch is the Yule log is made out of birch, I guess. Different ideas.
Well, I'm doing an immersion course with Jaidev. It's 4 days, and it will go over the 4 aims of life: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha.
Oh, that's cool.
it's like, you know, your purpose and then your prosperity and your desire and your liberation. So it'll go through all four aims of life. And I've studied a little bit through Ayurvedic practices, but it's going to be a really in-depth course. So I'm really excited about taking the time in solitude to learn more. So that was one thing I was thinking the solstice would bring for me. It's hard because, you know, you're so committed to your family and what they want, and Tara's home, and I know you understand all that, both of you
Yeah.
guys. And just finding that time to initiate something new it's not always easy during
I
this time
know, this
because
might
it's
not
such
be
a
the time
busy
of
time
year.
of the year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I really, you know, I really think it's important too. I think just taking, even if it's 15 minutes every morning, to get quiet and listen, like you said, just listening. So ask what you want and then listen. Just really have
Mm,
that ability to listen and find that balance internally
mm,
with the divine. So those are kind of my
yeah.
thoughts. And like I said, I mean, I hope I can do it, you know.
Is it live? Like, that sounds like a really good course. Like, I read an
Yeah,
article about that a while
he
ago.
does it, live in Nevada City, but then you can pay for the
Okay,
virtual. So you know, I'll be online, but it will be
yeah,
live.
yeah,
And
that's
then
cool.
if you can't make, there's 4 sessions. If you can't make one of the sessions, you get it for a lifetime. So you can watch it in a 4-week, you know, time period or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You don't have to watch it when it's live. You can do it on your time span, which is great. So, and then I'm taking another course from him that was sort of a bundle that, like, if you bought the immersion, you get this other course. And I
mm,
don't know much about it, but I've heard it's wonderful. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking I would do, and we'll see how it goes. So
sounds wonderful. Oh, you're
yeah,
gonna have to go. Okay, yeah, I realize you're gonna leave soon.
yeah, I do.
Okay. Do you have any? I was gonna pray. Did you have any thoughts you want? I won't look at them right now. You wanted to add, Francesca, about rituals, ideas. Okay. All right, I'm gonna raise my desk and it's gonna work this time. Uh, and I'm gonna pray. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, power of the 4 directions, all of our ancestors, we send a voice. Grandmother, grandfather, please show us how we can commune with our soul so that we can have a deeper relationship with ourselves, a deeper relationship with spirit, and a deeper relationship with what it is that we really desire, what brings us purpose and meaning, and what brings us blessing and prosperity into our lives. Give us peace, God, Great Spirit, give us peace with all the conflict and the fear and anything that comes up when we think about what it is that we want, and allowing and the whatever resistance we have to giving it to ourselves. Please give us peace on every level of our being. Help us, God, Great Spirit, to fight, to return to the light and fight to be warriors of the light, and to remember that in the light, we know that we deserve what we are seeking and what we desire. Grandmother, grandfather, this is a really special time of year to be able to come together at the winter solstice. It is a busy time. It is a family time. It's a social time. It's also a time where we have an opportunity to connect and commune with ourselves and with spirit, and to really perhaps feel that magical spiritual moment between the old and the new. Please help us and guide us in our journeys this week, God. Grandmother, grandfather, please help us to continue to heal. We say thank you. Help us to continue to be blessed. Help us to continue to do our sacred work, whatever that means to each of us. Help us to hunt and gather the regeneration, transformation, healing, and blessings that are available at this time. Help us to hunt and gather again what it is that we want, so that we can bring that in with us into the new year and this new into this new order. We take a vow, God, Great Spirit, to continue to revisit ourselves and our soul in order to know who we really, really are, and to allow ourselves to feel that liberty and that authority that our soul self is aware of. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, please help us continue on this healing journey of knowing who we are, of knowing what we want, and having the ability to create it. Give us peace with our limitations. Give us peace with our fears. Give us peace with any struggles we have. Give us peace with any resistance that comes up. Help us to be courageous warriors and fight for the light, and fight for our souls, and fight for our spirit as we would fight for others. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, this winter solstice, this is a threshold, a gateway between the end of one year and the beginning of a new year. We are in a time of transition right now, God, Great Spirit. We're in a time of, we have just spent weeks surrendering and letting go of the old, burning away the old with our candle work, and opening to a new sense of self, a new sense of light, a new sense of spirit. Please help us go through this, cross this threshold, and to be secure and loved and comforted at this time. Thank you, God, Great Spirit. Thank you for your love and blessings. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for blessing this group. Thank you for all the learning opportunities. Thank you for bringing us together. Help us to hunt and gather the light. Help us to hunt and gather the blessings. Helping us hunt and gather the healing and balance. Help us hunt and gather the transformation that we are seeking and the abundance that we are seeking. Grandmother, grandfather, we take a vow to continue on this journey and of communing with our soul self for this growth, for this healing, and for this balance. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, please show us the way for us to continue to be blessed. Help us to learn how to connect with this soul self, so that we can feel the comfort and the joy and the satisfaction of this communion with our soul self. Give us peace, God, Great Spirit, with the challenges that we face as human beings. Give us peace with the pain and suffering. Give us peace with the fears and the emotions. Help us rather to fight, to come back to the light, to remember the light, and to return to innocence. Grandmother, grandfather, this is a holy and blessed time, as the entire cycle is holy and blessed. But this is the time of transforming or transitioning from the old to the new. This is a time where we have this special opening to connect with you, God, Great Spirit, and to connect with our souls in a way that's different at any time of year. We have spent all this time going inward and praying and really focusing on our light. So help us to connect with that inner light these next few days, God, at this sacred and holy time of the year. Thank you, God, Great Spirit, for being here with us. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your guidance. Help us to hunt and gather this light. Help us hunt and gather the soul connection. Help us to hunt and gather the blessings of this experience. Help us to hunt and gather this healing and this growth. We take a vow, God, Great Spirit, to as best we can surrender and open to you so that we can be filled with your light and love to continue on our journey for 2024 for the sake of the children and the children's children, until the sun no longer sets and the moon no longer rises. Aho!
Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you.
Hi, Angie. Have a good night.
Have a
Happy
good night. Have fun with
solstice,
Tara.
guys.
Start a healthy solstice. Yeah. I'll
Love
see
you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I meant to wear my stole. I forgot I was Reverend Sydney tonight, but that's okay.
No, I like this. This one is good though.
Oh, thank you.
Good.
I got this from my Aunt Judy.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good.
It's good. Anyway, what are you up to tonight?
I'm gonna go check on my mom. I know she just got home from visiting her sister
Oh,
in the
nice.
far East Valley. So
Oh,
go
wow.
see what she's up to and then just return a couple phone calls. Before I go back and check on a couple of the slides that you went over when I had a work call come in. Like,
Oh,
of course.
okay. Oh, okay.
Because I was like,
Oh, yeah.
video off. Because if not, I'm attempting to listen and I'm attempting to like read the slides at the same time. And then I
Yeah.
don't really pay attention
Yeah,
to
right.
because I'm
Right,
busy
right.
paying attention.
Right. You really need to pay attention to whatever they're saying to you. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And I'm just like, but I'd much rather be listening to what you're saying for each slide. So I'm just,
Oh,
I'm
whoops.
just
Let me
like,
stop.